Is there any reason why America, despite being the world's largest oil producer, cannot use its own oil even if it wants to? It is much like a farmer growing crops on his own land. When he goes to use that crop again, he has to fold his hands in front of someone else. In the world we actually live in, what we see in front of us and what is behind us are always different. Similarly, millions of containers from China go to America every year. But why does America throw them in the garbage? And in the midst of all this, how does Iran smuggle Boeing 777 aircraft in front of the whole world? Let's find out all this in today's episode. Millions of ships sail on the seas of the world, and they survive on the shoulders of all those ships. 90% of our civilization's economy is made up of thousands of container ships sailing the vast oceans. And on each ship are thousands of iron boxes. The clothes you wear, the mobile phones you carry, have all been inside these boxes at some point. Yes, from a distance, it looks like the goods will arrive in containers. The empty containers will return. Everything seems to be going exactly according to plan. But in reality, there is such an inconsistency hidden in this flow that your eyes will roll up when you hear it. Because every episode of my channel is bound to make your eyes roll up. For more details, please read the description and the first comment. However, China has become the world's factory in the last few decades. Their huge exports and limited imports have created a vast trading empire. So the real problem begins when these stacks of containers reach the ports of Europe or America. The business profits of the entire European country are very small compared to China. And in the case of America, the picture is even more different. The world's largest consumer, this country imports a lot, but exports very little. As a result, 40% of the containers that come from China are returned loaded with goods. But where does the remaining 60% go? Not all containers return empty. This is because shipping empty containers means additional costs. Each empty box costs about $3,000 to ship back to China, and it also takes up valuable ship space. But a full container could bring in millions of dollars. China can even make new containers in its own country for just $1. So they don't feel the need to send back old boxes. The result is that many new containers are manufactured every year. Yet they lie rusting in ports and around cities in old countries. Some buy them and build cheap warehouses and small houses. Others melt them down to extract steel, but a large portion of them remain unused. These rusting mountains of iron are a silent sign of the imbalances in world trade. At the other end of this global trade lies the secret of America's oil. The country today produces the most oil in the world, but they cannot fully utilize their own oil. The first reason is the nature of the oil. The oil extracted from American soil is light and thin, which is called light crude. But most of the country's refineries are built to refine heavy and dense oil. At one time, America used to import dark oil from Mexico and Venezuela. Accordingly, machinery was also built there. However, now, to replace that machinery and make it suitable for processing light oil, an investment of more than $200 billion is required, which is not possible in a very short time. So they sell light oil abroad at high prices and import heavy oil from abroad at low prices. The second reason is the infrastructure crisis. They do not have adequate pipelines from where oil is discovered and extracted to the refinery. States like California, which lack their own pipeline infrastructure, rely on imports for about 70% of their energy. As a result, even if the country has oil under its soil, it cannot reach the right places. However, if we now turn our attention to the politics of sanctions and blockades, we will see a different dramatic story. Iran has been under strict U.S. sanctions for many years. They can buy or sell anything from the U.S. or its allies. Yet, a private Iranian airline called Great Air uses many American Boeing and European Airbus aircraft. But how is this possible? Every bit of this story is like a thriller. In 2024 to 25, 5 Boeing 777s suddenly come into the hands of Iran. Originally, these planes belonged to Singapore Airlines. They had been abandoned in the Australian desert for a long time. Iran could not buy them directly because of the sanctions. So first, an American-based company bought them. Later, the documents showed them being sold to 2 fake companies in Madagascar and Cambodia. In fact, these companies did not exist in reality. Everything was just a name to avoid sanctions. Then, when these planes came under the name of Madagascar, they went beyond the control of the U.S. authorities. Then, the planes filed for maintenance and started heading towards Kenya. But as soon as they entered Afghan airspace, they turned off their transponders and disappeared from radar. Then, changing their destination, they reached various airports in Iran. By the time other countries in the world realized this, they had merged with Iran's Great Air Fleet. According to the law, the United States also had nothing to do, because Iran's name was not on these transaction documents. Everything was done through a third party. These incidents remind us of how uncertain the global economy really is. The impact of decisions made far away affects your life every day. So, in the future, when you hear someone talking about rising oil prices or shortages of goods, remember that there is a complicated story of shipping law and diplomacy behind that reality.